Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Top 5 DEI, the premier podcast for and about DEI professionals. I'm your host, Jason Lambert, aka Dr. J, and my goal is to interview every person in the world who manages, practices, teaches, researches, or publishes anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm so glad you tuned in, and if you are ready to learn about some insightful DEI practices from experts from all over the world, and about DEI experiences from people just like you, join me and let's dive right in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Top 5 DEI, the premier podcast for and about diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals. I'm your host, Dr. J, here with the magic maestro, Zoom engineer in the background, Micah. And today we have a very special guest because this guest is also family to me, right? What's better than being able to interview your family? My cousin, we've known each other since birth. That's how long we've known each other.
Yes.
I'm very interested to learn about what she wants to share and also learn about her top 5 favorites. And of course, I'm not going to give that away until the end because that's the fun part. So let me dive in and tell you about who we have with us today. Dr. Tracy Taylor, who has a doctorate in education, is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Community Unit School District 303 in St. Charles, Illinois. In this capacity, Dr. Taylor guides and supports the district in defining and cultivating inclusive, equitable practices and policies as strategic levers towards developing and sustaining all students' appetites for lifelong learning, authentic connection to class content, and sense of belonging. Dr. Taylor earned a doctorate of education and a master's of science in education from Northern Illinois University, a bachelor's of arts in education from the University of Arizona, and endorsements in bilingual education and English as a second language from National Louis University. Please help me welcome my cousin, Dr. Taylor. What's up, cuz?
Thank you, cuz. It's so good to be on here.
And so glad to have you. I'm glad you agreed to come on and appreciate you because you've been on some other events that I've done too with the university. We had that, I think it's the mentorship speaker series. I think that was the name of that. And that was well received. Everyone enjoyed what you had to share. And I can't wait to see you because I'll be visiting Chicago soon and we can connect and hang out.
I love the cookout as you do too. So
yeah. So let's dive into the first question. And first of all, I always like to give the listeners some better understanding of how the show operates. We ask our guests 5 questions. We send them a list of questions, and that list evolves, it changes, it gets longer and longer. Or they can send us 5 questions of their own that they want us to ask them. And the final question, the 6th question, is about their top 5 favorite or top 5 preferences. So the first question that we're going to ask you is, how did you get into the DEI field? Tell us your journey.
So I want to just kind of start off by talking about just personally my experience with the lack of diversity. I grew up in a very white area. My sister and I were probably one of two of about 10 people in our entire school that looked like us. And I recall not having anybody of color as my teacher until I was in middle school. And that was one teacher. So I had one out of my whole K-12 experience of anybody who actually looked like me. Wow. So that was jarring. And there wasn't any talk about it and that it wasn't normal. It was just kind of not spoken about really. And so when I went into working, my very first job, I was the only Black teacher at the school. Again, not really normal for that it's not representative of our, our population as a people. Mm-hmm. So being there and not having anyone that looked like me, that was, again, it was an interesting experience. I'm not going to say that it was difficult because I kind of had come from those similar kind of backgrounds where I was one of only a few, but it's just kind of been something that's been part of my lived experience. From there, as a teacher of students who were learning English as a second language, I was a lot of times fighting a narrative amongst some people about, well, these kids can't, or maybe we shouldn't do this because parents might not speak English at home. So let's not send homework. Let's not, like, let's let her level of expectation be a little bit lower for those kids, or even calling certain kids like our sweet and lows. Like, even that was like a common, like, I'm like, really? I mean, then people were really feeling like they were being, like there wasn't like harm or intended malice by those words, but like that's just how they looked at them when they saw those children, those brown children. Like that was their lens. And
That's,
also,
that's
like,
crazy. Wow. Yeah, it says crazy. It reminds me of like
yeah, it is.
benevolent sexism where they think they're like it's sympathy instead of empathy. Like I feel almost like I feel sorry for you. Like there's something
Yes.
wrong with them and I can come and improve your situation for you. Like it sounds so, I mean, demeaning and not as empowering, but they thought they had good intentions, right?
Right. And it's just not dignifying, right?
Exactly.
It's
That's it.
looking at somebody just with, I don't presume that you can. And so I'm therefore going to have a lower expectation. At that time, I probably couldn't have named it as that, but looking back on some of those experiences helped me to kind of reflect and say, oh, that's really what was kind of going on here. And nobody really had the lens. There was not a DEI director kind of helping to bring that language forward, bring that thinking forward to change and push on some of that thinking. So, it just wasn't pervasive at that time in our area, having a focus on equity and inclusion. And then from there, I became a principal of a school that had 95% low income students. And we were a small school, maybe only about 350 students, but we had a lot of needs. And so I ended up kind of really always advocating, like, I know we're small, but I know we're small, but, and it would be more about like, well, you're small, you don't really need X. And it wasn't really looking at from a lens of equity what this small school really needs. What do these families need? How do we help make sure that they have access to the same things that other more affluent families have access to, that know about, know the questions to ask, know the people to ask.
Right.
So that was also kind of it was just an interesting time to, again, kind of feel like I was told one time, you're really being a squeaky wheel. And it wasn't in a way of like, keep it up. It was in a way of stop. So, it's like that advocacy piece for me was just, I really felt strongly, as their principal, as to someone who is focused on trying to ensure best outcomes for them. So from that job, I kind of moved into a consulting job with an organization focused on teachers learning how to support students learning English as a second language and culturally diverse students. And I taught a class during that time on cross-cultural education, and I really helped adults reflect on their own cultural identities and understand how they fit into our sociocultural context. And in doing that work, I happened upon a position that was opening up in my current district. And that's the district that my own child is going to be going to starting in the fall. So it was kind of one of those full circle opportunities to think back to Tracy as a little girl who did not have those kinds of, opportunities with people who had those lenses, to now get a chance as adult Tracy and her own child to be able to support some of that work in a district where she is going to be probably one of a, few Black children in her class. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's great. It's like the stars in line coming full circle.
Yeah.
And it's almost like being able to kind of, revisit the past and the present and make sure that your daughter has a different experience. So,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. And that's a great opportunity. Great opportunity. What is a project? And it could be a research book, any type of project, work project that you worked on or you're currently working on that you'd like to share and tell us about it.
Yeah. So my district is starting to create a strategic plan, which we're very excited about because previously we had not had a formalized plan in place that was a multi-year that really carved out what are our core values, what are our strategic priorities going to be, and what is our vision for the work. So we, of course, had pieces of that, but never really kind of squarely defined until this year. And part of my work in that initially was we were going to have a separate equity plan. And the thought behind that was, let's make sure that equity is, really elevated and really highlighted. And here's what our plan is. And we didn't want it to get lost in the overall strategic plan. But as we were really starting to think through our vision for the work of equity and our vision for the work on what the priorities should be as we try to create policies and procedures and just instructional practices that really honor all of our students, we felt like it made more sense to envelop the equity plan into the strategic plan. And I really am glad about that decision because it ultimately didn't become, here's this equity plan over here, and then here's the strategic plan that's actually like got the district stamp over here, right? And so
Right.
it's this work is the plate is equity, right? And so that's what we kind of have explained and how we arrived at that to all of our stakeholders that yes, we started separate, but ultimately the work is grounded in equity for all students. And so we were able to pull a lot of the same thinking from that group and some of the priorities that we had identified into the strategic plan. And I just think it speaks to, again, that progress that we're making from just not that long ago. I'm not that old. So it's not been that long. This was really not a discussion at all. But what our plan has in it now, one of the three priorities is about a culture of dignity. And so aside from a focus on instruction, which of course is important for schools, and aside from effective collaboration with all of our stakeholders, which is also very important, we have a third component, which is that culture of dignity. And how do we teach our staff and grow our staff to understand what it means to dignify and treat all of our students with dignity and their families? And it's about presuming competence. It's about affirming them for their uniqueness. And it's about opportunities for their uniqueness to show up and be represented and valued in the things that we're doing day to day, from our curricular choices, like what am I reading about? Who am I seeing? Who am I not seeing? What am I learning about? How is my teacher trying to engage me and create those opportunities that I'm actively engaged? So from there, we've kind of come up with like three big components for that culture of dignity. One being just ensuring equitable programs and infrastructures. That kind of harkens back to what I was saying as a principal, really making sure that we give everybody what they need. It doesn't have to be the exact same. And that's kind of like DEI 101, right? Like
Right.
giving people
Exactly.
what they need to promote that access and excellence for all students. And then creating learning environments that support the social and emotional well-being of all staff and students. And I think sometimes that gets lost and there's a focus on stick to the ABCs and one, two, three, but we know
Mhm.
belonging is really kind of a strong correlation to students being able to show what they know and to feel like they can be successful and demonstrate success. And then that last piece is about what are we doing to attract and develop and retain those effective, culturally competent staff that understand that kids are coming with their own big buckets of knowledge and their own big buckets of knowing, and not letting it get stopped at the schoolyard gate and say, well, that's great, but that's only for home. And here's what you need to learn. And here's how you need to learn it here at school. Instead, we want to open up and bring in all of those wonderful funds of knowledge that the kids have so that school is meaningful for them. That they're who we're here for, right? We
That's
want to make
right.
sure that this is something that they get out of it. This is their lived experience and their journey. So our commitment that we have for the strategic plan, which I'm really excited to see actualized, is together building pathways to excellence. And it's just really about there's not one right way to get to where you want to go. We're going to jointly as an organization with our community members, with our students and their families, come up with what are those pathways that are going to get you to those goals that you have for college, career, for life?
Yeah, cultural dignity is so important. And I'm glad that you're doing that and your organization is supportive of that too. And as you know, you're aware of the research and it extends even past just education, but whether it's in school with students or employees with work, healthcare, when it's cultural dignity, or and also when those who you interact with, those professionals have that cultural competency and literacy, then it improves outcomes for everyone. And so, and bringing your equity plan, integrating that into the strategic plan is a promising practice that's really taken on right now. Because I recall some time back, there'd be conversations about that, and folks would say, "Oh, we want it to stand alone so that it doesn't get ignored," right? But now that but things evolve, and now that I guess more people are more understanding and have a better awareness of diversity, equity, inclusion, we integrate it, just makes it that better because if there's an issue, a decision we need to make or something, we go to the strategic plan.
Yeah,
But this
exactly.
way, if it's through that equity lens, it's not going to be forgotten, right? It's going to always be there.
Right.
Instead of, like you said, we're looking at the strategic plan, but
Right.
the equity plan is off to the
Yes,
side and we
exactly.
miss it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So you talked about your strategic plan and you talked about your experience and your journey. What are some poor practices that you've witnessed or learned that DEI professionals should avoid?
Yeah. So I can just speak to when I started kind of doing this work as assistant principal several years back and how not to do it because we were really trying to get people to understand like cultural capital and knowing what our students are coming with. And that was what we did all our professional learning on. And we asked for feedback slips to be filled out at the end. And I think it was maybe after the third session or so, I opened one of the feedback slips and it says, in big letters, enough with this cultural capital crap! Exclamation point. And,
Wow.
and someone felt, really fine with putting that on there for, for us to see and gave us that feedback. So I'm like, okay. The thing that I think that when people are trying to start to do this work is that you can't go in assuming everybody is ready for the work. And not
That's right.
everybody has the same lens that even if it's the right work, not everybody has that lens that has been honed. Not everybody shares the same beliefs. And so, as an organization, you have your mission for what you're charged with doing. You have your vision for how you want to see that through and what you hope for your organization to look like in the future. But you also have people who have
Right.
different ways of thinking and ways of doing things. And I had a former boss say you can't fire your way towards, what your goals. Like you need to work with and grow your big people so that you can really move your organization in the way that you want to get it moving to. And I think you're not going to have everybody who feels the same way about anything. So
That's right.
that's out of the question. But if you go in guns blazing without the buy-in, you're really just going to have a lot of missteps, especially with this kind of work because it's so personal for people, culture, and just thinking about the way in which they show up in the world and how what their perhaps their own privilege is really is something that people aren't necessarily comfortable talking about or kind of confronting. And so, you have to be really clear when you want to make that initiative, well, beyond an initiative, really it being about making the change for your organization towards more diversity, more equity, more inclusion, that your vision is strong, you're giving people the skills that they need to do the work to understand, well, what do you mean when you say a culture of dignity? Like, here, let me give you the professional learning and help you and provide you with the support that you need to be successful and the resources that you need and the motivation, the incentive to want it to do the work. Because if any of those things drop out and you don't have the plan, like it's just not gonna lead to your outcome that you're looking for. So I would definitely say with this kind of work, because the sensitivity is still, it's sensitive. You have to navigate the waters, and it's just a matter of not everybody, especially if you think about the climate, like, or even beyond the climate, your place, where you're situated. So my community might be something that's very conservative, or my community might be very liberal. And so, yes, they're like waiting on this to have happened yesterday. And some might be like, no, I'm not quite sure. So you really just
Mhm.
need to understand where you're situated and think through how best to kind of get what you want to get accomplished.
Yeah, you made a point that really resonates with me, and it's the idea that everyone's not going to think the same. You know, attitudes, values, beliefs. I mean, we all have these unique differences, and sometimes, people generally fear change anyway
Yeah.
because it's ambiguous. They don't know what will be on the other side of change. They don't know what might happen to their position, all sorts of reasons why. And I found that sometimes organizations, they jump right in too fast. It's like they fire hosing someone.
Right.
And
Right.
these individuals, people aren't ready for that. And so like our framework, the Imagine framework, me and my colleague, Dr. Dayo Akinlade, when we talk to companies, we discuss how before you even begin to assess, analyze, set goals, you need to know who you are, who your people are, which organization is. So we
Yeah.
identification and mitigation, because if you just jump right into, hey, here's what we're going to do, everyone, you haven't given anyone an opportunity to really digest or process what's happening.
Yeah.
But if you kind of just start by, I know in the change management literature, they talk about unfreezing the organization first, then it
Yes.
allows it easier for employees and people to jump on board with any of the change plans that you have. And especially, I believe, important when we're discussing things like that's sensitive. I agree with you, as you said, it's like diversity, equity, inclusion for people. So I think that's a very good bit of advice that you threw out there. Just describe a time when you were a champion for DEI or witnessed one.
So I want to talk about this from a personal perspective. And my own child has some neurodiversities, which sometimes she gets anxious in new environments. Sometimes she has a hard time separating. Sometimes she has a hard time transitioning from one environment to another environment, maybe from coming in from outside. She is very young to coming into a really quiet environment. And so I have over the years worked with her school to get those kinds of things in place that would be supportive, not just for her, but really are supportive for all kids. And
Yes,
so
that's what people don't realize. It
that's what people
protects
don't realize.
everyone.
Like this
Right.
benefits everybody, but especially these folks,
Exactly.
you know?
Universal
So
design. It benefits everyone, and
yes,
especially,
yes, all in general, these in
Mhm.
particular. So
Yeah.
I I have just over the years, anything that she needed, whether it be like a fidget tool, I had to bring in, whether it be a wiggle seat. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but like it's a little seat that goes on top of a chair that is kind of bumpy that really kids can get that tactile feedback. And so
Mm.
they just need that feeling that allows them to get that feeling where they can rub their hands across it. And so all these things are really like nominal. They don't cost a whole lot. You could have like a little pinwheel where you blow on it and that helps kids take deep breaths, right? And we can teach kids to push on walls, to do like wall push-ups to get some of that energy out. And so I just felt like over and over and over I had to advocate for them to think differently about kids that don't necessarily fit into a certain box. And if I didn't have that knowledge, like, what would you have done? I can't imagine that my child's the first child that you've ever had here that could have benefited for some of these things. And so I just, because her time's coming to an end there, I did want to just meet with them and say, like, this isn't necessarily about my child, but for all children, just really thinking about what kind of professional learning can you provide to your staff to better understand how you can really create an inclusive environment for everybody. Because for her, she was excluded for some kinds of things. And some of the things that they were doing really weren't equitable for her. And being able to appreciate the diversity that she has. I give an example of her, like I said, coming in from outside and she's been up here and really excited. And then all of a sudden she's supposed to come sit on the carpet, crisscross, no talking.
Right.
I give the analogy of like, that's like a plane coming in for a landing and you asking it to like stop on a dime. Like the plane has that runway to come in, slow down and then
Right.
get to that final stopping. So that's the same way I try to make the analogy for people that are like, well, why can't you just sit down and, like everybody else? And like, that's just, well, she's wired differently for one, because for most people, that's fine. But for other people, they need a little bit more runway. So I just say that to say, I have had to advocate. And I say, if I didn't have that knowledge, I don't know that she would have had that same experience of getting those things. And just like I do with her, I try to do in my professional setting, because yeah, I believe strongly in that, and that's my role.
Yeah, it's amazing how far we've come, but also how far we need to go when it comes to understanding, neurodiversity and how all of us think and behave and act differently, but also how oftentimes we're just being human. I witnessed, as you know, in my former life, when I was in higher ed, I worked at, a lot of different after school programs, a lot of community workshops and things like that. And I would witness how this, let's say, for example, because I don't want to give out details or anything. It's lunchtime and kids are talking, it's at a camp or something. And now they have to rotate to their next, wherever they're going, next program.
Yeah.
So the teacher's like, okay, everyone quiet, might put the hand up. And then they're literally sitting there. The students finally get quiet and the teacher's sitting there waiting. I'm like, okay, it's 30 seconds. It's a minute. It's 2 minutes. How long you want them to be quiet before you give them
Right.
the next instruction? Then when the kids start talking again, the instructor seems to get upset about it. I'm
Right.
like, I mean, if you grown human being would, first of all, we can multitask. We can talk and then form a line and everything at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure kids can too. But even if you're a grown human being, if you're grown, I don't want to be asked to be quiet. And then once I'm quiet, you're going to sit there and wait for 2 to 3 minutes. I mean, this may be.
We want it to be prolonged. We want to make sure you're good and quiet. I'm guessing.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, why would we treat them differently than we would adults? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, and not to, I mean, I'm not saying that to kind of downplay your point, whatever, just an example of how just we have so far to go, because simple things like that, sometimes when we're in these positions of power, not just as teachers and in the education system, but also as leaders in organizations, I think sometimes we have our ego gets the best of us as well, to be controlling or if someone wants to do something different, then well, no, we can't do it that way. Again, that fear of change pops up, fear of losing this power. So, man, that's it's very interesting. But I'm glad that you are there, because, like you said, if you didn't have the knowledge, because most people don't, right?
Exactly.
Because
That's
you're
what I
professionally
said.
trained in this, so you're able to be empowered to do that, and that's good. And you can do that for other students as well. That's great. Our next question is: do you believe that homophobia and heterosexism or heteronormativity will cease to exist in the United States?
So I'm going to say no, but of course, I wish that was not the case.
Right.
So people will say that it's about their religious beliefs is the reason, but if that were really true, more people would have the other things that they were up in arms about, right? So that are supposedly contrary to their religions. I think we as Americans are generally in agreement about certain things being wrong, like selling drugs to children is bad. Teaching a kid to, put up the middle finger in a photo would be in poor taste, or, driving while intoxicated is reckless. But people in power or those positions of, majority tend to want to seek ways to remain in power. Like that's known. And I think privilege and power are interconnected. So making heterosexism be the norm means that I am afforded all of the social privilege of being a part of that group, right? But what's interesting though is that doesn't make much sense, because it's not a zero-sum game. So if you have other people that are enveloped and included in that norm, that doesn't make you lose your privilege by including other sexualities in the norm. So then I thought about it, I'm like, well, the only way that somebody could get upset about homosexuality being becoming more normalized is because what they really value is having privilege over someone else. because again, you could add more people to the group and we could all share that same privilege. But if you really want it to be more about I'm up here and you don't have that same privilege, and it becomes kind of like a hierarchy. So I just think that's interesting. And it's really, of course,
Yeah.
very unfortunate. And there's a show I watch, Ted Lasso. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of episodes of the first season.
Okay.
It's so much. I heard it's very good.
It is.
People
But it's about, for anyone who doesn't know, it's about a British soccer team. And one of the main characters is gay, but he's not out to his whole team. And he has one person that he's been able to confide in. And he says, I just wish that I could, at the end of a match, and we're like celebrating a victory, kiss my fella the same way that my teammates can kiss, their girls.
Yeah.
And I just think about that and I'm like, why can't everybody be able to love out loud? But I think it goes back to this kind of hierarchy of power. And I'm hoping more and more over time, more and more people will agree that love is love. But I just think that's a hard thing to unpack.
Yeah, I do too. And man, I'm glad you chose that question because this won't air in June, but we're recording this in June, which is Pride Month. So happy Pride Month to you.
Pride Month.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question. I did that you wanted that question, that we were able to ask you that one. But yeah, you're right. It's talking about scarcity, hierarchy, fear, all these different things. It's so unfortunate that people aren't able to love who they want to love. So we're at that was like it felt like that was a very somber moment, right?
Okay, I know. Yeah.
It's just, but now we're going to have some fun parts.
Yes.
Asking about your top 5 singers and why. That was the question that you want us to ask. You got the drum roll, but there you go.
Yes.
For your top 5 singers and the why. That's the good part. The why.
Okay. The why. Okay. So I'm going to start off by prefacing that Whitney Houston is not a part of my top 5. And though she has a beautiful voice, I cannot take that from her.
You might have a lot of people.
What'd you say?
They might turn off the podcast now. They're like,
I'm sorry. She has a beautiful voice, but she doesn't make me want to throw my shoe. If you've ever heard Jennifer Hudson when she is watching somebody on The Voice and she is into it, she's not a host anymore, but when she was one of the judges and somebody was really singing it, she would throw her shoe like, yes. So you need somebody who, when you hear them singing that song, you believe them. And I love Whitney Houston's voice, but she just it didn't soar to me. I didn't really believe her. So these people here, this top 5, these people can sing, for one. And for two, you want to throw your shoe. You want to throw your shoe. Okay. Because these people, and I have examples. So I'm giving you that's why I asked you how old your students were, because I don't know if they know some of these people. Okay. But for everybody's education, I have included a couple of songs that you should go back and listen to, so you know what I'm talking about. Okay. So in no particular order. These are not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But number 1, she's not number 1, just the first one, Auntie Anita Baker.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And the songs to go back to, for those listening, are Fairy Tales and Sweet Love. Yes. The way that you just believe her, that she said, I'm calling out your name. I feel no shame. I'm in love. Sweet love. Yes. Okay. So that is that one. Second one, Toni Braxton. Miss Toni Braxton.
Oh, yeah. Toni Braxton. Yes. That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Another sad love song. Here come the strings. Then somebody sings. Only takes one note. Come on. Only takes one note from that radio. It's just another love song. Yes. Okay. And then Love Should Have Brought You Home. Come on.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic right there.
Number 3, Beyonce. I know some people aren't fans. Sorry, come on. How are you not a fan? I'm going to go see her July 22nd. I'm excited. I'm ready. Best Thing I Never Had. and Hello. Those are two to go back and see that girl can sing.
Mm.
And then number 4, I'm gonna say Mariah Carey. You like Mariah Carey?
Yeah, Mariah Carey. Yeah, I mean, I liked her when she was out. I mean,
When she was out, she's still out.
she's a classic. Oh, she's still so. I don't follow R&B like that, but
Okay.
but it's surprising though that who you're mentioning are like, to me, they are legends. They're good though. You were listing a good top 5 right now.
Thank you. Thank
You
you.
know, and I'm not even an R&B like fan like that.
Yes.
So but I know those songs. Those are when I want to hear some R&B. Those are the
Yes.
songs that I'm picking.
So for Mariah, check out "Make It Happen." This is old Mariah.
Right.
This is from
This
Ni-
is that.
yes. Well, that's the
Mariah.
emotion. That's emotions.
Okay. I
Yeah,
mean,
so-
but you say old Mariah like when she
Yes.
was
Yes, when she was like,
high notes.
she was whistling. Yes.
Yeah.
"Make It Happen" and "Vision of Love." Check those ones out.
Mm.
And then number 5, she's a newer one, but Jasmine V. Sullivan. Miss Jasmine can sing her butt off.
What?
You know
Okay.
Jasmine Sullivan?
No, I have to check her. I've heard you. I've heard her name. You're not the
Jason.
first person to mention. I don't follow R&B.
Jason. All right. Jasmine V. Sullivan. If you have not heard of her, go immediately to your Apple Music and download at the very least, "Girl Like Me" and
Girl Like Me.
"Excuse Me."
I'm writing it down now. Excuse me. I'm sure I'm sure she knows.
I'm
Jasmine
sure.
Sullivan. And I've heard
I'm sure
that name.
knows.
I've heard Nura. Yeah, I've heard yeah, it's Jasmine D. Sullivan. Not
Jasmine.
just Jasmine Sullivan. All right,
I
Jasmine.
mean, no, I made that up. It's Jasmine.
Okay. Had me looking for Jasmine. There's no Jasmine.
She is
Okay,
the
got it.
Jasmine Sullivan to
So
me.
girl Like Me and what's that other song?
Excuse me.
Excuse Me. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I'm taking notes.
Take copious notes of the top.
Yeah. Because the way you said your top 5, man, put the spirit in me. I'm like, yeah, I need to.
That's what it's supposed to do. That's how you know. That's how you know it. If it doesn't put the spirit in you, then it ain't it. Sorry, Whitney.
You first mentioned Jennifer Hudson. I thought you were going to come back and bring her.
No, I don't really like her tone.
Oh, okay.
She be yelling. She be hollering.
Yeah, it's a difference. Yeah. Man, it's a good top 5. You're going to have me going back in time on a journey for the classics.
I don't know if it's just my age. That's kind of like, I might be biased. So just like I think Michael Jordan's the best over LeBron. I mean, I'm not going to it doesn't matter what stats list you give me. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm not changing my mind. But maybe it's just because I'm a Michael Jordan person.
Yeah. You know what? I used to think that too. People bring up, the 6 rings and slam dunk competition, things like that. But now that, the more I look at stats and also the other things that LeBron does outside of basketball, I guess it's probably because I'm older. I'm starting to shift my perspective in what I regard as a GOAT. You know what I mean? Because he has all the characteristics. And with the ring, it's like, you also have to have a good team. Jordan had a great supporting cast with his run on the Bulls. I'm just keeping it real.
Yeah.
And LeBron tried going from place to place, but sometimes, things just aren't the pieces don't fit together where they're supposed to for the ring thing. But at least I'm saying all that. I'm still on the fence. I'm still on the fence.
He also flops a lot. Go back and check.
Oh, yeah, he does flop a lot.
There's a lot of flopping. He does a lot of complaining.
He changed the whole industry. Now everybody's flopping.
I know. It's just a thing now.
Changed all the NBA. Yeah. Anyway, sorry if you have any people who love LeBron out there.
Sorry, you guys. Talking to an 80s baby. Sorry.
But the people you mentioned, these singers, I think they stand the test of time, though. I'm pretty sure no matter how old the audience members are, listeners, they'll recognize these names. I'm the one. I guess it's just gotten old. I need to check out this Jasmine D. Sullivan. I ask my daughter.
Yes.
Ask Ty. Ask my partner about that. Hey, what's going on with that? Check that out. Get some new R&B.
There you go.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast and being a guest. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners did too. Can't wait to see you so we can hang out. Are you going to
Absolutely.
you going to the house picnic? House picnic's not paying me. I should not.
Yeah.
This would be like after the recording session. But anyway, we're just having fun. Like to be transparent with the listeners. We're real people.
Yes.
DI is a serious topic, but it's a serious issue. But at the end of the day, behind these turns and these constructs and theories and action and this fight for justice, they're real people
Yes.
behind this work that's being done. And so it's important that they get to hear our voices too, especially like your top 5 singers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Taylor,
Thank you so much.
and to the listeners, remember, if you like what you hear today, make sure you download it, share it, like it. You can also visit imagineconsultingllc.com. That's Imagine with no E, IMAGIN, consultingllc.com. You can sign up for newsletters. You can find out when more podcasts are being recorded. You can be in our Zoom studio audience and also be the first to know when new episodes drop. Enjoy your day. Peace out from Dr. J.